Oikos presents 15 Seconds of Strength.
Here we go. Steve's got a trunk full of groceries and no one to help him.
Oh, that's tough, Jim. Looks like a 5-trip load at least.
He grabs the first bag, the second. Bob, it looks like he's trying to do it all in one trip. He shimmies the door open, steps over the dog, and he stumbles.
Oh, right into the kitchen without missing a beat. Jim, now that's a man who eats his protein-packed Oikos.
With 15 grams of complete protein in each cup, Oikos Triple Zero can help build strength for every day. Oikos, stronger makes everything better.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, April the 17th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's produced the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a shout to get in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM. Which is 86-26. So for two of our three Newfoundlanders and Labradorians playing in the NHL, their season is over. Today's the final day of the NHL regular season. Nuke got his 15th last year for 34 points. That's his career best. Congratulations. Dawson Mercer, of course, got his 20th a couple of days ago. Finishes with 33 points in 82 games. Nuke's 34 points in 55 games. Zach Dean, he's got into 8 games so far this year. Getting a taste of some NHL action. One more game for the Blues for him to get a chance to hit the score sheet. So far, he has not. And on the curling front, of course, curling, big conversation in the province and the country. One of the greats of the game, Glenn Howard, hanging him up. He's going to hang up his slider at the end of this season, which I guess is now. So he's got 4 Briers, 4 world titles, and of course his brother Ross was member of the 2000 and when's the Internal Olympics? 2006? Yeah, 2006 when Guzzi and the boys won the Olympics. Ross was on that team. I don't know if you saw this story, and before I read it in the media, I heard it from one of my pals. So if you've ever traveled anywhere, like across the country in particular, you're bound to run into someone from this province. The Newfoundland and Labrador diaspora is spread worldwide. You can go to almost any country on the face of the earth and there's someone that's from this province. So there was a group of people that had booked some holidays. They're going on a carnival cruise. And lo and behold, on the one ship, there were some 500 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians on the ship themselves. They had a little party for them on one of the decks. They all congregated for the group photo and a little sing-along and what have you. But 500 Newfoundlanders on the one cruise ship? It's a funny story. All right, and I love this one. It was on this date, 60 years ago today, that Americans got their first glimpse of Ford's new sports car, the Mustang. It was revealed at the World Fair in New York City. The retail price at the time, $2,368. Fast track that to 2024, it's about just shy of $25,000. So it was introduced 4 months before the usual start of the 1965 production year, so people know it as the Ford 1964 and a half. And you all know the story, but I love retelling it. The first Mustang ever sold in North America? In St. John's. I always can't wrap my mind around that particular story. So a guy named Harry Phillips in 1964 sold the first Mustang with a serial number of 5F08F100001. So he sold it to a pilot named Stanley Tucker. He wasn't supposed to sell it, but Tucker was, pretty confident and I imagine possibly aggressive that he liked the car so much he was not taking no for an answer. They sold it to him, and of course as soon as Ford found out about it, they wanted it back. So for 2 years they were pestering Mr. Tucker to get the Mustang back. He refused until he capitulated, said all right. He drove all the way down to Michigan to give it back in exchange for another car. That car with the Newfoundland plates continues to be on display at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Imagine the first Mustang ever sold in this province. I always love that story. Okay. So we talk about policy and politics and spending and what have you, and I think we kind of get numb to the numbers, because when I was a kid, if someone was a millionaire, then that was pretty extraordinary. And now there's hundreds of billionaires. So for context, $1 billion is a lot of money. And we're going to talk about some of the billions included in the federal budget here now coming up in a minute. But just for maybe an easier way to wrap our mind around just how big these numbers are. 1 million seconds is about 12 days. 1 billion seconds is almost 32 years. 1 trillion seconds is 31,688 years. So we're talking about some pretty astounding numbers when we talk about issues like the federal budget. Okay, let's get into it. So for starters, it's a pretty thick document. $535 billion is the Canadian budget. People will focus in on spending, the new spending. Absolutely, we should. So, some $52.9 billion in new spending over the course of the next 5 years. And, of course, a lot of focus in this budget on housing. $8.5 billion in new spending on housing. The national debt is in excess of $1.2 trillion. That's about $30,600 for each Canadian owing on the national debt. The service to carry the debt, debt servicing carry is about $48 billion, almost double what we spend on defense. So the numbers are absolutely massive. There's going to be lots of back and forth about what the new spending might mean for inflation and the ability for the Bank of Canada to begin to reduce their key interest rate from 5%. Mr. Macklem, of course, the Governor of the Bank of Canada, has been loath to do so. We'll get into some of the new inflation numbers, especially in this province, now in a bit. Okay. So not only are the numbers astronomical, and we can't get into all of the $535 billion, I'm sure you don't want to, but let's just get a couple of key issues. People will talk about the number of people that work for either, say, the city or the province, and yes, the federal public sector. So there's some 357,000 people who work for the federal government. They're talking about job cuts. How many? 5,000. 5,000 over the course of the next number of years through attrition. People on the organized labor front will say that that's a problem because they want to protect their workers. But if the thought is, with 5,000 people no longer working or those jobs not being replaced in the federal government's public sector, that there be suggestions that it will compromise access to services and increase wait times, for instance, like at airports or what have you. You'd like to believe that I'm sure there's plenty of people working for the federal government that have a pretty significant workload. But, 5,000 job loss, what's that, about 1.35% of the federal workforce through attrition? So that's going away. You want to take it on? We can do it. Inside the world of housing, we've heard, the $400 million more into the Canadian Housing Accelerator Fund, $6 billion in the Housing Infrastructure Fund. All fair enough, but the aspirations to think that they're going to be able to, as they say, unlock nearly 3.9 million homes by 2031, if you speak to people in the construction industry, they don't know how they have arrived at this aspirational number and target. I mean, for starters, we've got a skilled trade shortage, and yes, some of the Housing Infrastructure Fund does come with some attention to, lag time and duplicity when it comes to inspections and the like at the municipal level, and yes, trying to open up the ability for municipalities with populations in excess of 300,000 to allow for duplexes and triplexes and 4-unit homes and all the rest of it. And yes, there's been a breakdown tax when we talk about building apartments. But where it becomes problematic, and this will not be welcome in some people's ears, but the supply issue is the key here. So yes, they're going to offer some supports for people to get into rentals. And yes, there's going to be some moves made provincially and federally to make it easier to get into a home. But the fact of the matter is the homes aren't there. So people can point to immigration, and of course we've got to right-size the numbers coming in and maybe really keen focus on skilled trades, people who are healthcare professionals, people working in the tech sector, what have you. But the fact of the matter is, it's a feel-good. When the federal government is obviously trying to curry favour with millennials and Gen Z, which is now the largest voting bloc in the country, I get the politics of it, but I'm not sure I get the policy of it. Yes, it would be nice to get some assistance to make it easier and more affordable to get into a home, whether it be amortization periods extended to 30 years, whether it be increasing the ability to withdraw from your RRSP from $35,000 to $60,000. And yes, you don't have to start repaying it for 4 years versus 2 years. All sounds very helpful. But what's that going to really mean for the housing crisis that the country is experiencing? You can put forward incentives on the demand side, but what's that going to do? Is it simply going to mean that homes will continue to rise in cost? Will it continue to further exacerbate an already ongoing supply-side crisis? So I get what they're trying to achieve, but I'm not so sure it's anything more than saying to young Canadians, hey, I got your back. But do you? I think they got your side, not your back, because I don't think this is going to improve things in the long term. And we don't know exactly what it's going to mean for impact on inflation. Because spending is spending. People can talk about the focus and targeted spending, whether it be in housing or otherwise, but is this not going to possibly make things worse through the guise of making things easier or better? I don't know, but I think that's a big question we have to ask. They talk about, unlocking some federal buildings, which long should have been the case. Why would any level of government be sitting on a building with all the carry costs with insurance and otherwise? So yes, then they talk about building on Canada Post lands. Okay, they talk about the potential to tax vacant land. Just a consideration at this moment in time. But again, for the government to tell me that I must do something or other with a piece of land that is mine, then I'm not so sure that that's going to be all that welcome to many corners either. Let's get into a couple of other things. So there is going to be an increase in capital gains, which will only impact a limited number of Canadians, probably somewhere in the top 1% of Canadians. So they're proposing an increase of the taxable portion of capital gains up from the current 50% to 2/3 for annual capital gains over $250,000. Okay, no new taxes for those of us in the middle to upper middle and lower class working Canadians, so that's a good thing. Folks in the disability world, advocates have been pushing for the monthly amount of money flowing to people with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 64 to be $1,000 a month, $200. So nowhere near what people were hoping on that particular front. For small business, the government had long pledged for there to be a carbon rebate afforded to small businesses with employees of less than 500, and it hasn't happened. But now the government says they are going to promise to return a portion of carbon pricing revenues to small business. So it could impact some 600,000 businesses, maybe $2.5 billion directly to Canada's small and medium-sized business. Then they get into the sin taxes. You're going to pay more if you smoke. You're going to pay more if you vape. And that's long been a go-to revenue source for many. Then this one will be latched onto quite loudly by certain people in the political spectrum, the CBC. So another $42 million to the CBC. Last year they received $1.3 billion in federal funding. That won't be welcomed in many corners. Then they're talking about more money. We've heard the defence spending proposal by Minister Bill Blair. Nowhere near hitting our NATO requirements of a minimum of 2% of GDP. Over the course of the next 8 years, we're going to hit somewhere in 1.76, I believe the number is, 1.76%. More money for Canada's spy agency. So while the inquiry into foreign interference is ongoing and all the political confusion about the who, knew, what, when, and the flow of information throughout government, so more money for the spy agency, of course, that ceases, $655.7 million for that organization. So, and we've heard all the big spends on dental care and pharmacare, but yes, $52.9 billion in new spending over the course of the next 5 years, and whether you want to talk about it from the housing angle or anything. And there's so much to it that we can't possibly break it all down in one mouthful here this morning. Oh, for students. They are going to try to update the formula for the Canada Student Financial Assistance. They are going to extend the student grants and the interest-free loans. That's going to cost the government just over $1 billion. I would suggest on that front, regardless of the level of who's offering the student a loan, provincially or federally, there shouldn't be any interest on those loans. It's counterproductive. So the government making back some money on interest when, in fact, on the heels of convoking and getting out into the workforce, having to struggle with student debt. And I'm not saying that we should wipe it out, much like the American conversation that's ongoing, but to reduce the amount owing is good for the economy. Because if we're just paying interest on loans back to the governments, then that money's not being spent on goods and services. Because the economy is not the government. The economy is me and you and how and where we spend our money. So I think we should remove interest from all student loans, period. Just makes sense, I think, in the overall scheme of things. Anyway, you want to take any of that on? We can do it. Something interesting is going to happen in the House of Commons today. It hasn't happened very many times over the course of the last 100 years or 100 or more. So you can indeed be held in contempt of Parliament and called to the bar, not the Law Society bar, but the brass bar inside the House of Commons. And in this case, it's going to happen today with one of the Arrive Can contractors. The partner of the company at GC Strategies is Christian Firth. He's going to be admonished by the Speaker today. Hasn't happened since 1913. So pretty amazing stuff. inside the whole Arrive Can scandal, I mean, it's just ridiculous. The Auditor General of the country couldn't even tell us exactly how much it cost. Why? Because there wasn't an adequate paper trail to add it up. They're guessing in and around $60 million. And then GC Strategies able to award themselves a contract because they set forward the parameters of it for another $25 million. They've done plenty of business with the federal government over the course of the last number of years. Here's some of the times it's been today. So refuse to answer questions from the committee about what government officials GC Strategies did business with. And now today, they're going to be Mr. Firth will be forced to answer. So MPs are going to be able to ask these questions. They're going to be able to ask follow-up questions. Back in 1991, former Member of Parliament Ian Waddell was called to the bar, admonished by the Speaker. 2002, Keith Martin, who was also a former Member of Parliament. Most recently, a fellow named Ian Stewart, who was then the President of the Public Health Agency of Canada. He appeared before the House. Why? Because he failed to turn over the documentation regarding the two scientists fired at Winnipeg's microbiology lab. So this hasn't happened very often, but it's going to happen today, and it would be nice for government to be able to give us some sense of security regarding the integrity of the procurement process. But Mr. Firth, you're on the firing line today, so to speak. All right, told you I'd bring you some inflation update numbers and cost of living related matters here. And of course, the two main drivers inside inflationary pressures in the country, energy and shelter. And that's the case again now. Nationally, inflation up by 0.1% to 2.9%, but a problem here, up to 3.1%. There's only three provinces in the country have a higher inflation rate than this province here. Gasoline, the main contributor, and yes, shelter, the main contributor. So there you go, right? So when shelter is driving inflation, and yes, provincially and federal governments, they have to do something to try to curb this national housing crisis, but it also has a direct relationship with inflation. So anyway, I wish I was smart enough to fully understand it, but you want to take that on? We can do it. All right, very quick provincial note. So we know that the Auditor General is going to perform a performance audit or investigation into the private healthcare contracts. First step, though, as told by the province, is that the Comptroller General would do a review. And apparently we're told now that since the AG has said she and her team would step in and do the audit, that they stopped doing the initial review at the Comptroller General's office. They say no need for parallels or overlaps or duplicity or duplication. Well, it's going to take at least 18 months to hear from the Auditor General. I think the concerns are very much today. So yes, great for Denise Hanrahan to have a look at, say, travel agency nurses and the Compass Group and other private contracts, but no real need to stop the Comptroller General in their tracks, is there? So anyway, we're told that report will not be forthcoming. All right, we're on Twitter. And of course, anything under the sun, provincially or otherwise, just because we had a bit of a focus on the federal budget, which I think we should have done this morning, anything that you want to talk about is exactly what I want to talk about. We are on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. Don't go away. And welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Don, you're on the air.
How are you this morning?
Okay, Don, how you doing?
Not too bad. I've been continuing my quest, Patty, to find out an answer to a question I've had for a long time. We're in the trouting season now, and as of yesterday, the trouting is closed for 29 days straight. It'll open again in May 15th. I went to the Bay Robbers JFO office a couple of weeks ago, and I got talking to a fisheries officer there. And I asked him, why in the world, after more than 20 years, is this closure still into effect? And Patty, you know what he told me?
No.
He said to keep Newfoundlanders from drowning themselves.
Why? Because of the spring runoff? Is that what that's about?
I've heard it. I don't view it as a reason. I view it as an excuse. But that's not their mandate. My safety is not DFO's mandate.
Well, it kind of is. You know, navigating waterways, consideration has to be given to safety in addition to, you know, protecting the species and setting forward the schedule. And there's only pause on the island, right, in Zone 1. And there's also a pause maybe on rainbow trout at some point as well. But
yeah, there's a multitude of rules and regulations. But, Patty, where I'm living on the island, surrounded by water, landmass, Newfoundland, Labrador, a multitude of streams and rivers, gullies, ponds, and lakes. And we can't go fishing.
Okay.
It's unbelievable. And although people saying, and you've probably heard, you can correct me if I'm wrong, politicians say and other people say the resources are supposed to belong to the people. Isn't that right?
Well, yes. Technically speaking, yes, 100%.
Here we are, we're barred from going. You can go in the country. People ask me, I'm an outdoor type. Say, we can go up to the cabin, we can go on our four-wheeler or side-by-side in the country, have a boil up, but you can't go fishing, Paddy.
I know, I heard that part, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Well, if the answer from DFO was, I guess, in essence, spring runoff concerns, fair enough. Whether that's legitimate, whether or not that's actually the reality regarding how dangerous it might be, I'll leave that up to individuals. But you're right, there is that one pause, April 15 to May 15.
And I'll tell you, Paddy, a lot of my friends here, I live in Downey on the beautiful Border Great Peninsula. A lot of my friends are fishermen. All the stuff they got to deal with DFO, commercial fishery. And a friend of mine, I can't remember how it came up, Jimmy Porter, a longtime fisherman in this area, said, down there's three sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth. And I don't believe what that officer told me is the truth. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what that would be. Any idea what might be in addition to safety concerns?
No. Maybe I'll give you a call later, Patty, and tell you why.
Sure. Feel free.
As time goes on. But I heard you talking to a gentleman a couple of days ago out in Central to do with the salmon and the catch and release.
Yep. Junior.
I can't remember his name. Was it Junior? Was his name?
It was Junior. Junior Downey.
Yeah. And they formed a group against the catch and release.
They are. Always have been.
It all started many years ago when a band by the name of Lee Wolf came to Newfoundland. And their idea, and it's carried on right to this day, is catching trout and salmon, Paddy, for profit.
You're allowed to sell your trout, aren't you?
What's that?
You're allowed to sell your trout, aren't you?
No, I'm saying that, like the Atlantic Salmon Federation and all those people that support them, they believe that the salmon and the trout are too valuable just to catch once. You know what I'm saying? It's all to do with making money, right?
Okay, through the sale of licenses and stuff? Is that what that means?
Well, it's all to do with the big business, right?
Okay, so maybe you're talking about outfitters now. I guess I'm trying to follow along. Anything else, Don, before I take another call?
No, that's good, Patty. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too, buddy. Bye-bye. So, and inside the world of trouting, it's 12 fish per day is the bag limit, but there is such a thing as a possession limit as well. And of course, I was too stunned to understand that last time I talked about it, but the possession limit is 24 fish, or I think it's 4.5 kilograms plus one fish. But of course, you could be on a 2, 3, 4, 5 day fishing trip, and consequently, you can have as much as 24 in your possession upon return to your vehicle or what have you. And I had an email regarding the fishery, and this time it's the recreational food fishery. We know that there was a petition that had been circulated. It was presented in the House of Commons by Clifford Small, and the emailer was wondering why, if I knew whether or not any of our 6 Liberal members of Parliament were in support of the extension in the recreational food fishery. We'll find out at the 11th hour, and it's probably going to be 39 days like it has been in the past, with very similar dates for opening and closing, summer and fall. But I wonder if any of them actually support that. Now, the petition was calling for a real increase in the number of days. I believe it was to 90, but it'd be curious to know what the members think of it. Okay, let's go to line number 1, say more to the Director of External Affairs at MUNSU. That's the Student Union at Memorial University. That's John Harris. John, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
So what I want to talk about today is yesterday was the inaugural meeting of the Education Accord. So that's the new initiative of the Department of Education that's looking to evolve our education system to ensure that we're preparing our students and our province for success. The only kind of issue I felt with the inaugural meeting is that in this meeting that's getting together to try and find out how to bring students forward and improve our education system, there wasn't a single student in attendance. So I was a bit disappointed that none of the students' unions were involved in the first meeting. This is about the entire lifespan of a student, coming from early childhood education all the way to post-secondary and across the lifespan. And so I just felt like I know there's probably intentions to consult with students in the future. But how and who they're going to consult with is not being decided. And I just think it's this kind of project needs more than just a type of token consultation. I think that students should be meaningfully involved in it and should be the ones advising this group and in deciding the scope of what they're looking for. And
students of what age? Like, who are you trying to include here, John?
I think that students should be on the education accord as part of the attendees. I think that you have each section has a different group of people who are in attendance. From the post-secondary world, we had administrators from MUN and CNA, and we have the president of MUNFA, which I think is great. But there wasn't a single MUN students union or MUNSU was not involved in this part. And I just think that students, and additionally there was no parents involved in this initial meeting. So I think that I would like for there to be more meaningful participation from students when it comes to education accord, if we're going to get the results that we're looking for in terms of figuring out how to bring students in the education system forward to better the success of our province.
Yeah, I would suggest we need teachers and administrators. We need parents of school-age children. I don't know if you can incorporate a whole lot of student voices from the K-12 system necessarily, but this is a school community conversation. That's how we should be looking at it, in my personal opinion, because if we're talking about the successes, then we are looking at a real problem here in this province. The decline in scores since 2003 are absolutely off the charts. The issues regarding chronic absenteeism are off the charts. The staffing shortages is a problem. The class composition is obviously concerning. So this does not only include, the two professors at MUN, and apparently they are absolutely up to the task, and we look forward to their recommendations and the report, but it's a school community that has to be involved in trying to turn around or stem the tide, the downward pressure inside the world of academia, especially in K-12. We know the issues regarding post-secondary across the country, but I think your point is well taken. To not have all hands represented at all levels when we try to modernize or transform the education system, then we're probably leaving out some important voices.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I'd be happy to be involved in the consultation that goes forward. I know they intend to do sessions with different stakeholders throughout the process, but I think my point here is that without a Oh, sorry, I went on mute there for a second. But I'd be happy to participate in the consultation, and I wish them all the best. But I think that to start the initial meeting with no representation from students, from student union, or for the people who are actually in the system and being the ones that are trying to help, I think it's not a great foot forward. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, Patty, is I know I called a couple weeks ago about our town hall. So that town hall is going ahead, and it's happening on Monday at 7 p.m. Another bit of a disappointment from the provincial government. Andrew Furey, Premier Furey, has declined to attend for the second year in a row. So that's a little bit disappointing. In his stead, there will be the Minister of Education, Crystalline Howell, which very grateful for her coming, as well as Tony Wakeham, the Leader of the Opposition, will be there. Jim Dinn is going to be there. We also have the President, Neil Bowes, and the Chair of the Board of Regents, So we're definitely really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, Minister Crystal Lynn Howell, I'm very glad that she's able to attend. But what we were looking for is, getting Premier Fury to answer to his decision on doubling tuition for students. And so, I think that it's a bit of a shame that for the second year students won't get to ask him about why MUN has been, the tuition offset grant has been completely defunded, and why the tuition is going up twofold for students. But we're definitely looking forward to it, and we definitely encourage all your listeners to attend. It's open to the public, not just for students or the MUN community, and it's going to be at 7 p.m. on April 22nd at the Breezeway. Hope to see you all there.
Appreciate the time, John. Thanks for the call.
Thank you very much, Patty. Have a good one.
You too, man. Bye-bye. John Harris is the Director of External Affairs with Monsu. Let's take a break. When we come back, Trent is going to talk about his experience in the emergency room. That can't be good. And Mike, I believe, wants to talk about green energy. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Trent, you're on the air.
Hey, boss man, what's happening?
Not much, man. How about you?
Oh, boy, I've had better days. So I'm going to tell you a little story, the tale of two stories. One is the bad story, and the other one is a good story. So let's just backtrack to about a year ago. I got brought to Emerge by one of my coworkers. I was feeling awful at work, heart fluttering, confused, really tired, really out of sorts. So they brought me in, sat in Emerge, brought me into bed. I sat in Emerge probably for 12 hours, and then they brought me out back and done blood work. Found out that my potassium levels in my blood were dropped down way too low than what it should be. So anyone that knows anything but medical, potassium is very, very important chemical to control your heart. So I got that all straightened up. Then fast forward now to this year, I had two close friends of mine. One dropped down with a massive heart attack at 51, and another one in his early 50s. Both of them, one guy with a massive heart attack, and the other guy was diagnosed with cancer. So I went to my GP and I asked, can I get some extensive blood work done to, just make sure that everything was fine. 43 years old, it's time for me to start looking ahead now, especially with a daughter. So I said, time for me now to start getting on the wagon now and looking ahead. So anyway, my doctor put me through all these tests, and he sent me in for blood work. I get a call back from his receptionist that my potassium levels have dropped again. So she asked me to go get it repeated. So I go back, and so now fast forward to this week, which is Monday. I go in at 12 o'clock, and I get it repeated. So around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, me and my wife and my daughter were on the TCH driving on the highway. We get to Avondale, and we get a call from the doctor that's in charge of the blood lab at St. Clair's. She said, you need to turn around immediately and get back to St. John's. She said, if you're not, or get to the nearest emergency room. She said, and if you're driving, you need to pull over and let your wife drive. She said, you are not safe to drive. So we switched spots. I got back to the emergency room around 5 o'clock. So I checked in at 5 o'clock. It took me an hour to register at triage, which, I let a couple of people go ahead of me because they came in. One guy was having stroke symptoms, and the other guy was having a heart attack symptoms. So I let them go ahead of me. That's just the kind of guy that I am. So I sat in the emergency room from 5 o'clock Monday morning until 10 o'clock yesterday morning, when I finally got called in to see a doctor in the emergency room.
Give me that timeline one more time.
I registered at 5 o'clock Monday.
Yeah.
When my wife dropped me off. I never walked in, so I sat in the emergency room out front where you register. I sat in out there before I got called in to see a nurse or a doctor in the back 10 o'clock yesterday morning.
10 o'clock yesterday morning, Tuesday. So you were there for 29 hours? Am I doing the math here?
Before I actually got in to see anybody and got any more blood work done, it was, sorry, I give you the wrong time. It was around 8:30, 9 o'clock before I got called in and got any more blood work done.
So still 27 and a half hours?
Yeah.
I mean...
So what really upsets me And why I felt like I had to reach out is because when the nurse from when the doctor from the health lab called me, she told me that and this is her exact words, and my wife can vouch for me when I say it. She said to me that your levels, she said, are in the critical zone. So anybody, when you hear the word critical after having blood work done, you automatically think the worst, right? So like I said, me and my wife dropped me off right away. So, and I said to the clerk out front, I said, I was told to detour from wherever I was going and to report right away because my levels were critical. But it wasn't that critical, because like I said, they draw blood work when you register. But obviously to them, now this is where it gets really mucky and really, really weird, really messed up, is that when they drew my blood work when I checked in at around 6 o'clock Monday, 9 o'clock that night, I goes up and knock on the window and just asks, is there any progress on my blood work? And she said, yeah. She said, your blood work come back. She said, and your potassium levels were still low. Okay, fine and then. So if my levels were low and the doctor at the St. Clair's considered it critical, why in the hell did it take so long for me to get in? And finally, when I came in, my levels dropped even lower. So like a regular potassium level in your blood should be around 3.5. Mine was 2.9, and the doctor called me, and it dropped down to 2.2. So it took that long. So the time frame is the wait time that I had to endure is insane.
It is insane, regardless of what ails you and the amount of worry and being told to rush to the closest emergency room. So again, you sat there from 5 a.m. on Monday morning to...
So 5 p.m. Sorry, 5 p.m.
Okay, because first you gave me 5 a.m. So, of course, we're not talking...
No, sorry. 5 p.m. my wife dropped me off.
Okay.
So, it was 9 a.m. before I even walked in through the door. So that's like 12, 14...
16 hours.
16 hours.
Yeah, because when you gave me 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. the next day, then, of course, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Now, 16 hours is still brutally long, but it's a different story. Okay.
Yeah. And I haven't slept like that. If I told you that, I'll probably said being up pretty much since Monday, not being able to sleep. You're not all there. So if I give you that wrong time frame, but it was 5 p.m. when my wife dropped me off.
Yeah. Okay. So not that makes it that much better, because 16 hours is still an extraordinary amount of time to wait to be seen. Trent, I appreciate the time. How are you feeling?
I feel best. I got no symptoms at all. Like compared to the last time, like when I felt really miserable, this time, like I don't even have anything that would trigger why I would have to be checked out. But so I told you, sorry, just one quick thing for you. I told you the tale of two stories. So I mean, that's the horror story at the beginning of it, getting into the system. But once I got out and back, now this is the good news story. Is once you get out back, the care that you receive from these guys is amazing. They're ran off their feet because this place over here is on wheels 24 hours. It don't slack at all. The nurses are go and doctors are go, 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 go. But once you are actually inside the door and you get someone to look at you, the care has been phenomenal. But now I'm into the waiting game again because the internal medicine group admitted me in, so now I have to wait to get a room upstairs. So he figures it might be sometime tomorrow before I can get a room upstairs. So here I am now sleeping out in a hallway waiting for a room upstairs.
Yeah, and which is an all too common story once again. And of course, there's probably a physical bed upstairs, but there might not be the staff to make it a bed that could be occupied by a patient. Trent, I wish you the very best, and I appreciate your time.
All right, buddy, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. So, there's a variety of reasons as to why, I suppose, wait times are so, I'll call it, bad at emergency rooms right around the province. I guess it could be a bunch of different contributing factors, but certainly some of it is people's inability to get a family doctor. I mean, what could have been done in someone's collaborative care clinic versus having to run to the emergency room? And some people do use the emergency room like it's a family doctor's office. Not everything is an emergency where people are waiting. Then it's the concept of triage. You don't know how many doctors might be out back, or out back, as you said, in the ER itself. Doctors and nurse practitioners and licensed practical nurses and registered nurses and otherwise. It's always impossible to know exactly what's going on in the ER itself, as opposed to what you're seeing and the anguish you feel when you sit in the waiting room. but that's a long stretch. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Mike, you're next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 3. Mike, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Paddy. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, sir. First, I want to say I love Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm a protector of the environment. So I like to get that out there, and because that's very important to me. And obviously, it's important to a lot of other people between the news, social media, the phone calls, and everything else. But Paddy, if you don't mind me asking, and I don't want your civic address or nothing, but
I'm not getting it.
What part of town do you live in, Paddy?
I'm an East Ender.
You're an East Ender, okay. And you're there for various reasons. You chose to live there because of your own personal choice and stuff. You could have lived anywhere, but you wanted to live down there. Is that correct?
I grew up in the East End.
Okay, well, I'm up in Salmon Line, and I like it up here for my various reasons. And that's where I chose to live. And we have people out in these areas that are being affected by the projects on the Borderport Peninsula and Codroy Valley and all that stuff. And they chose to live there for their various reasons. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. What point are you trying to make, Mike? Because people will live where they choose to live, or maybe where their job is, or where their family is, or whatever. So, yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make. And for all of us, for most working Newfoundlanders, one of our biggest investments will be our homes. Would you agree with that?
Does it matter if I agree or not? For the vast majority of people, the biggest equity piece they'll ever own in their life, of course, is their home, yes.
Okay. And no, I'm getting to the point of my story in that year, and you know what? That's your biggest asset and everything else. There's a lot put into it. So here is the scenario, and the people on the Avalon got to give compassion to the stories that are coming out, because I'm sure if and we have a lot of business people and a lot of elites that live on the Avalon and stuff, but I'm sure if these projects were planned on Airport Heights, Southlands, up around Dannyland, St. Phillips and stuff and that there would be lawsuits coming out of that yin-yang, especially the way these projects were done, and they were done in secrecy. But and there would be war in St. John's. The lawyers in St. John's would fill up the courts if this was coming 1 kilometre from their homes. And we deserve, these people in these rural areas, they are Newfoundlanders too, and they deserve the exact same respect as we expect for ourselves. You know, I moved up Salmon Line here for a reason. I'm pretty rural up here, and I moved up there because I got a chicken coop, and I got a vegetable garden, and I got a cellar. You know, and I'm surrounded by the beautiful woods and that is here. But I would be out of my mind, if they came behind my house, and put hundreds of 600-foot towers, and we all got to look at that, and why this fears are here, legitimate fears, mental health attacks, waiting for the flatbed to show up with an excavator. This is all very, very real. You know?
Yeah, but who's denying any of that? And plus,
okay, and now
and you say it was done in secrecy. Is that accurate? I mean,
okay. Well, I want to put. I'm going to give another scenario. If Mike Coos was premier, if I was premier, I want to tell you how this should have played out. If I was the premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, and we had a wind energy moratorium for 15 years, and we were thinking about lifting it. Now, if I was premier, this is what I would have done. There wouldn't have been no actions taken until it was lifted, other than, okay, if we're going to lift this, the first thing we're going to do, if we're going to protect the people of this province, we're going to get wind legislation. There's a couple of provinces in Canada have done it because of bad history and everything else, and we say, okay, so that's the first thing I would do as premier. I would get wind legislation put in place. And then the next thing I would have done as premier, so we're going to get our legislation done if we're considering energy, you know? And, okay, the next thing I'm going to do is, okay, well, the wind energy, what are we going to use it for? Am I going to use it for foreign countries, or when we're going to need power? No. I'm going to use wind energy for Newfoundland. So that will be my next thing, that if I was in government and the 40 MHAs and all the people, code of conducts, transparency, democracy, which all of this flies the face in.
Okay, just let's take this one step at a time. So you're suggesting that when the moratorium was lifted, which people wanted because people were mad when the moratorium was imposed, to be honest with you. So
Paddy, let's address that first. It was imposed. The wind energy moratorium was imposed for to go on our grid. That's what it was imposed for. It was imposed for they didn't want projects coming up and backfeeding in the hydro because of Muskrat Falls.
Yeah.
It was for wind energy for us. That's why it was imposed.
It was wind for anybody. It was a generic wind farm ban, period. So, and a lot of that, of course, was to allow for the so-called need to develop on the Churchill River at Muskrat Falls. You're right. But if you're talking about wind for domestic use, so are you suggesting that hydro and the government should build wind if we were going to use, domestic use? Because they're talking about looking around for options to satisfy forecasted demand down the road. So are you suggesting that the hydro and the government should build a wind farm?
Well, that would have been the very first choice I would have made. I wouldn't have entertained anything if I was premier from foreign countries. If we're going to go green energy, and then I would entertain. If I was premier, the legislation is put in place. We're going to entertain wind energy to backfeed to keep the lights on here ourselves when the Muskrat link goes down because of the towers and everything else. But the next thing I would do was probably what indiscriminate locations we can put them where they don't affect people's lives. And then the very next thing I would do, the next thing is I'd make a public platform and bring in all the stakeholders, the people of the province first, the tourism industry, hospitality, private enterprise, bring it all out on the table. And I would do that, and I will give it a platform, not 30 days. I will give it probably 12 months if I was premier. So now we're armed ourselves, we're intelligent, we're going to protect the people of this province, we're going to protect their homes, their mental health, and the other thing is the 6,000, and I want everybody, the 3,000 matchsticks that they're putting all across Newfoundland affects all of us. 3,600-foot matchsticks. I can give you the failure rates for fire, structure, and everything else, and wind blade separation, and all that. But if I was premier, and if I had signed the code of conduct, and it meant something to me, the stakeholders and the people of this province would have came first before any shovel went in the ground. Now, is that not good government? Is that not democracy? And is that not... why do we have 40 of them in the House of Assembly if they're not there for us? What are we paying them for? It's insane. And the anger is only building. And I know the House Assembly done a code of conduct review on Andrew Fury because he is the godfather here. He is the godfather. He's put every 540,000 people in this position. And he's done it illegally, and he's done it through the back doors. And hopefully...
What was illegal about it?
Well, I'll tell you what his code of conduct, that was in a direct violation. If you don't include the people of this province when you're a premier, if you don't include them, so what do we need you for?
What was illegal, though? What specifically is illegal about this?
Illegal because he when the first time he got, if I was premier, and there was a 15-year moratorium on, and the first bit of correspondence I got from World Energy or Germany or Everwind, and the first bit of correspondence that I got as premier is, listen, I can't go behind the backs of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and discuss anything about wind energy. It's the same thing when the cod moratorium was on, and if we had the premier there giving away millions of or millions of tons of codfish while the cod moratorium's on. How is that any different?
Well, it's obviously and demonstrably different. I mean, even look at offshore wind. The amendments aren't even concluded with the amendments to the Atlantic Accord to allow potentially for offshore wind, but yet proponents of offshore wind have been kicking the tires here in conversation with Andrew Parsons and others. It doesn't make it illegal. Like, I don't know what... Something might be unethical or... Okay, Mike, final thoughts to you. Wrap it up.
If I was premier...
Yes, if you were premier.
And the Newfoundlanders went to bed one night, and the next morning they woke up and 1.6 million hectares public land. They can call it crown land, but it's public land. Everyone in this province, 540,000 people, owns that 1.6 million hectares. And if it's not illegal, against the code of conduct, you go to bed one morning and you wake up and you read the newspaper, and 1.6 million hectares was gone by the Premier of this province.
But 1.6 million hectares of land is not gone.
Paddy, it is gone. It's been allotted out for wind energy. So we can't be in denial about that, my friend. But it is gone.
There's only been 5 proponents. There's only 5 proposals in play, and that does not use 1.6 million hectares of land. It's just the facts of the matter.
But
so
if we had 10 projects, and next thing we don't. If we had 10 projects that sucked up the 1.6 million, then what's to stop them? Like, we have nowhere to go forward here now in this province. We got corrupt government that are not listening to the people. We can go nowhere but further down the hole. Until this is changed, until government listens to the people, until Fury stops this madness, or the RCMP makes them stop it,
Okay, so the same can be said for someone who comes forward with a mine expansion plan, or a new mining player comes to town. So how do you think these things should unfold? I mean, the people have to be listened to. The people's business has to be attended to. People have to come first. I don't think anyone argues those basic points. But, business and doing business with government, I don't know how this constitutes anything illegal. You might think it's unethical. You might think it's shady. You might think it's behind closed doors. It might be done in the shadows, whatever people want to say. But all of those things are a long way from doing something illegal where the RCMP has to step in. That's where I think some of the concerns being brought forward, maybe people are taking them a step further than reality allows, just to bolster their point. But people can think that this is the worst government of all time, but the whole issue regarding illegal is a different kettle of fish, isn't it?
But Paddy, the enormity of this, taking 40 hectares for a sod farm is one thing, but 1.6 million hectares is crazy, and the enormity of it is what makes it a crime. This was 4 projects. Like the Newfoundlanders go to bed and wake up and we got 4 hydrogen projects. We got we're going to be storing hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of ammonia in our communities. People's phones will have to be put on an alert database if there's a catastrophic release. And it's like the people in Stephenville may think this is great, but as the peels of the onion come off and they realise that they got to keep the cell phone with them all the time, because if that plant has a failure, that could go up to 20 miles. And this is how serious this is.
Mike, I appreciate your time. I'm late for the news, but I do appreciate you calling back to the show today.
And Paddy, maybe sometimes I don't say it, but I hope VOCM and yourself and that deal, there's not a lot of places to go. There's a lot of crippled media and stuff. And I want to thank you and VOCM. And this is a very serious matter, and it deserves for all the voices to get out there. And I hope VOCM will continue to do such a good job to let the people speak out.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Paddy.
All the best. See you, Mike. All right, let's go ahead and take a break for the news. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Leah, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Paddy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi. This is my first time calling, and I just want to commend you and the producers of the show as you give the public a voice, which is great.
And we appreciate your voice here this morning. What's on your mind?
So I'm calling as a concerned parent of a child with a learning disability. The education system currently is failing our children of this province. And I'm calling now because it's a timely time to call, because I know the Teachers Association now has a campaign titled "Our Education System is Not Okay." So I prepared a petition for parents and caregivers with children that have learning disabilities, with children that have speech delays, with children that have ADHD, autism, auditory processing disorder, sensory processing issues, behavioral concerns, and traumatic backgrounds. I prepared this petition for parents and caregivers to sign to support the need for education changes. I'd like to communicate the key areas of this petition now, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so the title is Parents and Caregivers Demand an Improved K-12 Education System in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I'm just going to read it because I am a bit nervous of the key elements of it, and then if you have any questions, you can just ask me after, Patty.
You take your time. Go right ahead.
Thanks. So as a parent of a child with a confirmed learning disability in reading and writing, I am aware of the struggles faced by families in Newfoundland and Labrador. My son's journey and our families through this public school system has and continues to be very challenging, making it extremely difficult to secure necessary supports he needs. So this lack of awareness and timely programming has not only hindered his ability to learn, but also negatively has impacted his self-concept. So I'm in a position where I may have to leave this province because I cannot get the resources needed. And the resources that I'm getting now have been very delayed in coming, which is very disappointing and disheartening. So our story absolutely is not unique. Many children across the province face similar challenges due to the inadequacies in this provincial education system. This province needs to establish a student needs-based approach supported by allied healthcare professionals. And I'm going to repeat that again because there's complex needs in the classroom. There needs to be allied healthcare professionals connected to these schools. Classroom teachers are not equipped to foster a learning environment for our children when there is multiple complex student needs, like I stated before. And there is a major lack of resources allocated in the schools. For example, my child needs speech therapy. There's one speech therapist coming to our school, and she is shared between 5 schools. That is not appropriate. Our current educational system is failing our children, is failing our community, and it is absolutely failing our province. So I'm just going to get into the things that we should be asking for, that we should demand as parents and caregivers. Every child has a human right to a meaningful education. The time for change is now. Parents and caregivers, we need to support each other and voice our concerns to our local government officials as well as Newfoundland schools and ELT schools to prioritize improved education. So we demand, and there's a couple things, smaller class sizes. With the complex needs that are in the classrooms now, 25 to 30 kids in a classroom setting is not appropriate. There is no way a teacher and a small team can address these situations when they're not aware and don't have the knowledge and the background to support these children. Number 2, alternate settings outside the classroom for small group instruction for intensive intervention in literacy and numeracy. You cannot expect a child with ADHD to be in a small group in the classroom when there's multiple behavioral issues going on in the classroom and other complex needs. They cannot focus. Number 3, research-based programming for children with learning disabilities. So, for example, you need, for a child with dyslexia or a specific learning disability in reading and writing, they need a structured literacy program, such as the Barton. And numeracy programs, a structured numeracy program for math, such as Cloud9. So the schools are not providing this, right? It has to be a specific programming. Number 4 is the speech therapist, which I touched on earlier. And there needs to be focus not just on one-on-one, but oral expression as well. And this is the key building blocks for literacy for children. Research shows if their speech is delayed, many do have issues with literacy. So we need to really focus on these allied health and allotting the proper resources in the schools.
Yeah, because if you don't get diagnosed early enough so we can have early intervention, these things are further exacerbated, which is another story in the news today. Just let me jump in for a second, Leah. So class size, of course, is one thing, but it really feels like, and there's a lot to what you've said already this morning, this really feels like it all boils down to class composition. Because in the current environment of inclusive education, I think the system is just not staffed up appropriately, nor people are properly trained to take on the complexities inside the classroom, which is not only bad for students with exceptionalities or disabilities or need additional supports, but it's not working for anybody. It's not working for the teacher, it's not working for the students that don't need additional support. So I believe the path you're going down is pretty much keenly focused on class composition. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes and no to some point, but it's equipping the schools and providing professional development education to the staff as well, right? So, inclusive model, absolutely. Diversity in the school, absolutely. But in terms of inclusive teaching in the classroom, if you're going to have that policy in place, you need to equip the classroom and the school with the appropriate resources.
Okay.
And I just got two more points, and I know I'm taking a bit of time. So the fifth one was, this is a key one, the allied health services housed in the schools to support complex needs of our children. And this includes social work, OT, physiotherapy, public health nursing, behavioral management specialists. There's got to be a link there. There's got to be more, because of the complex needs. We're saying there's complex needs in the classroom. Okay, so let's put the resources. Let's equip the schools with these professionals, so the teachers have somewhere to go to get help, right? To teach. At the end of the day, they need to teach, right? And the last one is to support our teachers. Absolutely. Provide ample funding and opportunity for professional learning development in ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, speech language issues, mental health issues, behavioral concerns, and functional disabilities. They need the awareness and the education. So that's basically what my petition is. I don't know how I can communicate that. Is there a way I can provide it to you, to put it on the website, or what's the best approach there, Patty?
Well, you can just send it to me directly. You can send it to the newsroom, however you see fit. Either or works. If you just send it to me, I can forward it to the newsroom on your behalf, or you can simply use an email address, really simple one. It's feedback@vocm.com, and they'll get it right there.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to, in closing, parents and grandparents, caregivers, we need to have a voice for changes to be made, because this is our children, our community, our province, and we have to have a voice. And I really appreciate this program, because this has provided myself with a voice, so that's great. Thank you, Patty, very much.
I'm glad you made time. Please send that along.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Leah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And an emailer sent this along, and this was absolutely on the top of my mind while we're speaking with Leah, is when Carter Churchill and his family went through the Human Rights Commission. And when it came out the other end, it was determined that the province had dropped the ball and had betrayed Carter Churchill. Of course, sitting in silence, no access to American Sign Language, because that's how he communicates. So you really felt at that time that that was going to be precedent setting, so that every other child that needs additional support, whether it be ASL or otherwise, that the province would see that rolling and think, well, the next time that it comes forward in the form of a Human Rights Commission challenge, we're going to find ourselves right back in the exact same boat. So it was about the child, about the lack of attention, lack of supports, and then there was also a financial consequence to government's inaction on that front. So you really felt like that was going to be part of the conversation going forward, but apparently not. Let's take a break. There's a big water main break impacting operations out in the town of CBS. The mayor of CBS is Darren Bent. He joins us after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the mayor of CBS. That's Darren Bent. Mayor Bent, you're on the air.
Thank you, Patty, and good morning. Calling this morning regarding water main situation that's affecting thousands of people in Conception Bay South, and I want to thank the residents for their patience. It's been nearly 24 hours now since the break started. I just want to go back and sort of tell you where we are, what's been happening, and what's next. So around 3 o'clock or so yesterday afternoon, there was a significant break to the main water transmission line coming into the town. And that break occurred just off of the Anchorage Road area, as we know. So since it was the main transmission line, there's a lot of pressure all the time. So when it breaks, you get a significant loss of water in a short period of time. And that's why residents in that area are seeing some washouts and some flooding in property and so forth. As a direct result, of course, it affects water for thousands of people from one end of town to the other because it's the main line coming into the town. People in higher elevations are affected more significantly, of course, and some other people are seeing lower water pressure. Some are seeing some discoloration and so forth. So as it happens, this break occurred in pretty well the same area as we saw a few breaks a couple of years ago, residents will remember. And because of that, we actually did have the necessary materials fairly close to conduct the repairs. And that's important because those materials are not usually even in the province unless you have a job on the go. So we're fortunate in that respect. The materials to do the work was right there pretty well. So that work continued on that break on the main line till about 2:30 this morning when it was repaired. To get things going again, you drain the line, you recharge the line with water, and that's when a second break occurred about 40 feet away from the original break. And, of course, if you have compromised pipe, you're going to find it's going to let go when you push the pressure back through after something like this. The thing about the second break is that it was about 40 feet from the original break into a wooded area, so you can imagine now in the middle of the night, through alders and such, over ground that you've just dug up soft, water everywhere, getting heavy equipment and people on site to excavate and to dig it up and to see what's needed. They were able to do that, and once they got it excavated, they found a 6-foot split on the bottom of the pipe. And this is a 2-foot transmission line, so it's a significant pipe. And since that time, our staff and as a result of the second break, we called in private contractors to help continue with the repairs throughout the night. That work is actually continuing at this hour, and it's going to take a few more hours. So we have everything we need to get the breaks fixed. We just need a little more time.
Do you have a guesstimate as to when the water will be restored in full, repairs complete?
Yeah, so guesstimates are just that, Patty, and we're really cautious about it, but we're hoping later this afternoon, maybe before people get home from work, But, one thing I want to say about this particular site, and to try to, allay some of the concerns, is because people in the area had this happen a few years ago, and the people throughout the town were affected by the main line. After that happened, we actually did a full assessment of that line. And we found that there were 800 meters. That's not almost a kilometer of that line was actually compromised and in need of repair. And because of that full assessment we did, we secured the funding somewhere in range of $2.5 million to upgrade that area. We have the work on our schedule for this year and to get that line replaced. And we're in the tender process for that to have done. So, once that tender process gets done, we're going to see a replacement of that 800 meters of line coming into our town that we expect now after the assessment. This is the area of problem. It's 30 years old, been there, for a significant length of time. And, of course, when you get older and compromised piping in the spring of the year with the freeze thaw and the high water table, that's why we're seeing it now. But we're going to have that piping replaced a little later this year for residents. So it's a significant project. So
obviously so. So when we think about, things like culverts washing away, we put back bigger culverts to handle the flow of water. Are you putting back the same size pipe? Because your community is growing. So I guess the basic question is twofold. Are you putting back the exact same size pipe? Or with the population growth comes further strain on things like wastewater, clean drinking water, and a variety of other services. The sea surge did some damage out in your neck of the woods a number of years ago. So is the infrastructure up to the population growth? Because you've approved another few subdivisions in your area, so the population will continue to grow, we think, in CBS Paradise. So is the infrastructure up to the task?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question, Patty, and thank you for asking it, because this is a little different. This is, of course, coming in from Bay Bull's Big Pond, and this is the proper size of piping to come in for that to supply the town. But what you're referring to would be the piping that we take over into the other areas of development and so forth, and you're right.
Mayor Bent? I don't know what happened there. He's still live and active on the line, but maybe some sort of mute action in play. Can you pick up the phone, Dave, see if we can get Darren back on? Because that was an important part of the conversation. See if we can restore our connection with the CBS mayor, because, and I don't know the ins and the outs of provision of clean drinking water or storm sewers or how they're handled necessarily. I'm not a civil engineer, but when you see the same thing repeat itself, you wonder whether or not it's time to go back to the drawing board. So it might not be directly akin to the size of the culverts, but if the community is going to continue to grow, the pressures on provision of water, is going to be something they'll have to consider. Now, they said they did a comprehensive engineering review of, and he was starting to answer the question about the size of the pipe to provide water to his residents coming from Babel's Big Pond. Dave, you want me to move on and we'll see if we have to rejoin? Okay, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 1. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to
Patty. I want to say a shout out to Leah. Thank you for having a voice, honey. You are one of many here that have a voice, but unfortunately with the Liberal government that's been in power for years, it's falling on deaf ears. So the reason I'm calling this morning, Patty, is the federal budget yesterday, Bill C-22 to be specific, is supposed to be a guaranteed income for people with disabilities. In Canada, we have 6.2 million people with disabilities. 23% of those people are living below the poverty line. Now, if you compound that with families living, taking care of their children at home that are now young adults, this bill was supposed to help those families. They've now put it down to $200 a month benefit. Well, that will start in 2025. No help right away, but even this $200 a month, what a slap in the face, Patty. If I was to put my child in a home, which I would never do, because he would never get the care needed in a home, sorry to say it, but it's a fact, the government would be paying through the yin-yang. But for parents that stay at home to look after their children with disabilities, there is nothing. The more you try to do as a family member, the more you're discriminated against by this government.
But this government, of course, is the government that actually tabled this piece of legislation. Now, I know advocates were talking about $1,000 a month being the sweet spot, and they've landed on $6 billion over the course of 6 years, and that comes down to, you're right, $200 a month is where they landed.
Yeah, it's another, again, a slap in the face for these people trying to survive. You know, it's like Leah said, we start off, my child's almost 20 now, still in school. We start off from day one fighting for services. We get some services up to grade 6. By the time they get to grade 7, to grade 12, it's a complete gray area. The services fall that far behind that it's crazy. So by the time my son leaves school, he is completely unready for the world. He is barely functioning as it is because of lack of supports. So now he's in a world where he can't function. He can't hold a job. He can't do anything. So who's going to look after him? The government? Are you kidding me? 23% of those people with disabilities. It's twice the amount of people without disabilities living below the poverty line are people like my son. You know, where are they going to turn? What are they going to do? There's nothing out there for these young people. Nothing.
It certainly is a...
And you say, you know, for those that can work and be given jobs, I mean, it's time a shakeup happens. I belong to so many disability communities and the autism communities. I have friends with young adults that have been working part-time, full-time. Do you know, Patty, I'm going to call it like it is, those jobs have been taken away now to maybe 1 day or 2 days a week, and now those jobs are given to newcomers. Why? Why is this happening?
I've asked Minister Byrne direct questions on this programme about the use of temporary foreign workers, and of course it is not supposed to be to replace locals, and in some instances that has happened, and it should not happen. That's not what the programme is there for. It's there if the jobs cannot be satisfied by people living in the area, so none of that should ever happen. Let me get that out of the way. $200 per month is absolutely underwhelming and of minimal assistance to people who are between 18 and 64 living with a disability. Agreed.
That's right. And again, the shoulders of those those that want to look after their kids with disability are pretty worn out, let me tell you, to try to make ends meet and get by and look after their young adults. But those other ones out there, I'm really not prejudiced. I lived in so many multicultural cities in Canada. But again, it comes back to we need to start taking care of our own people, for crying out loud. I'm a senior now. Seniors and people with disabilities, we are falling through the cracks with Medicare, with everything here in this province. It's just Canada's not Canada anymore.
Well, people have been immigrating to Canada since Canada became
I'm not
a country.
talking about that. I'm just saying we've become so overwhelmed. We have lack of housing. We have lack of doctors. My God, we have lack of doctors. We have lack of everything because we've become so compounded with so many other places coming here for help that, those that are just struggling to get by are suffocating, and that's the truth of it. We're suffocating. Look at Tent City. They're not all people with mental illnesses down there and addictions. There are people down there that, my age, that have nowhere to go because we can't afford to live anymore.
I think it might be a little bit more complicated than that behind the Colonial Building and other of these tent encampments, of which these are across the country. Someone told me in the last couple of days that there's as many as 30 in Halifax. And Halifax is on wheels. Yep. It's economically booming. So it's, at this day and age, in a prosperous country like Canada, people should not be living on the street to the extent they are. There's always going to be people fall through the crack for a variety of reasons, but the way that it looks today is unacceptable in this type of first world country. I appreciate your time this morning, and yes, inside the Canada Disability Benefit Act, it's of limited benefit. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll rejoin our conversation with Mayor Darren Bent. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's rejoin Mayor Bent on line 3. Mayor Bent, you're back on the air.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the gremlins are this morning, Patty, but they seem to be in a lot of different places. So I'm not sure what happened there. And I'm not sure where I got cut off. Can you remind me?
Sure. Well, I had just finished asking you the question about whether or not the infrastructure is up to the task of population growth inside your community. You were talking about the fact that the 2-meter line is the appropriate size to bring water from Babel's Big Pond, but I was wondering whether or not the overall infrastructure was up to the task that the population growth that your community is experiencing.
Yeah, and a little different issue on both ends, but I can say that the 2-foot line that comes in is the same line that in the city of St. John's, where we buy our water at a significant cost from the water board, is 20-odd kilometers long, and most all of it is not in Conception Bay South, and that is the standard line that they have coming through. So to put in a bigger line for 800 meters would, of course, make no sense there. That would be a bigger project that the regional water board would have to look at if they wanted to increase the line of water coming in. What we can say is that all of our projects going forward, they're assessed for water needs, they're assessed for down the road and what's proposed, and the appropriate culverting, the appropriate piping, and so forth, and water capacity is assessed, and that's what's required to be installed for all those divisions. What I can tell you is for the bigger culverts, and we saw that terrible video, a couple of weeks ago from the West Coast, is that there's been a major culvert upgrade by the province of Newfoundland and Labrador on Peacekeepers Way already, and I understand that there's another one coming, which is the appropriate thing to do as is required on those major pieces of infrastructure. And of course, the province controls Route 60 and the culverting there. In our own areas that we control, it's absolutely part of the town plan that these things be addressed as they're constructed. So you don't just construct it for the 20 houses here. You assess the entire area and the possibility for development, and you ensure that the line and the water is proper. Beyond that, even, Patty, when it comes to climate change and the significant changes we're seeing in the intensity of storms, it didn't have the same effect, but just a few weeks ago we saw just as much snow as we had in Snowmageddon. And then followed by a big rainstorm. So that puts absolute pressure on infrastructure, and we saw some washouts on roadsides, and we saw a couple pieces of our trailway affected as well. What we're doing and what we've been doing for the last couple of years is that when we install new roads and do new paving, we're installing curb and gutter. And that goes a long way to controlling water flows to the right areas rather than just washing out onto properties and so forth.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure we had that infrastructure-related conversation because it's all frustrating enough for the residents to endure a water main breaking. You know, all the schools are closed and the rink is closed and all the rest of it. So, and, you know, add to people's homes and the inability to get fresh, clean water. You mentioned some discoloration in other homes that have not lost the entirety of the pressure. So any final thoughts this morning, Mayor Bent, before we say goodbye?
Yes, thanks, Patty, and I appreciate that. It's an absolutely important conversation, and we even had that conversation a few days ago when we had our developers forum here in Conception Bay South with regards to capacities and development and infrastructure and so forth. And it's a conversation we have all the time, especially in these climate changing days. I just wanted to say, first of all, for the homeowners that have seen flooding in their homes in this area, they need to reach out to their insurance company. For the surface work right now, we have crews in assessing driveways that have been damaged and doing repairs there. Those repairs are being done, of course, to allow people to get back in their homes. It's important that we get that work done as soon as possible to help them along. And, of course, asphalt won't come for a while. Plant's not open yet, but that will be done down the road. And I would encourage anybody that's had the damage there to make sure they contact our public works at the town. Our town office is open today, taking calls from residents. We wanted to make sure that we were on staff and standing by for any specific concerns that may be something we didn't anticipate or haven't heard from yet. But yes, our facilities are closed now, certainly with an update, I think, at noon. But another thing, Patty, is emergency, right? Our fire department has been in touch with St. John's Regional to secure backup pumpers in case of an emergency, because water has a lot of applications, and one of them is to fight fires, and we need to be ready in case something may happen. And the other end of it is, look, when these repairs are done, I ask everybody, don't use any unnecessary water, clothing, so forth. In the meantime, just help us out with that. Try not to use any unnecessary water. And then when the repairs are done, wait until then to run your water to get through the discoloration. And our crews are going to go around and flush key hydrants to help along with that so that everybody gets back to normal as soon as possible. But if everything goes well, Patty, later this afternoon we should have this in hand. But when we recharge the line again, we hope it goes well and smoothly, and we can move on from here. And then, of course, get the significant work done later this year.
Fingers crossed. Appreciate the time and the update this morning, Darren.
Thank you for the time, Patty. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. It's Mayor Darren Bent out in the town of CBS. Okay, coming up this month, the 20th to the 24th in Dundas, Ontario, is the playing of the Allen Cup. They've been playing for the Allen Cup since 1908. It's the oldest championship in the country. The Southern Shore Breakers are going to be participating in it. Tell us about the upcoming tournament. On line number 2 is Ian Sullivan. Good morning, Ian. You're on the air.
Mr. Patrick Daly, how you doing this morning, buddy?
Couldn't be better, man. How about you?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. First, like I said, I wanted to talk about the Southern Shore Breakers going to the Allen Cup, but I wanted to first congratulate the St. John's Caps on winning the 2024 Hurler Memorial Championships.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, that's a great thing for their organisation. I think it's been like 30-something years since Caps last won the hurler. Was it, Paddy?
I had two different numbers in my head. Someone told me that it was somewhere in the 80s, I believe 1987, but then that's been refuted. But that's the number that I had in my mind, is 1987.
Yeah, but it's great for the organisation and everybody involved. But so the reason I'm calling is about the Southern Shore Breakers going to the Allen Cup. That is a huge undertaking for our organisation, and it's a great honour for an organisation as small as the Southern Shore to be representing Newfoundland on the national stage here for men's senior hockey. And like you were saying, it is the oldest national hockey championship in Canada, and we're really looking forward to going.
100%. I mean, it's pretty prestigious stuff. So I know Dundas, the Real McCoys, are the hosts. There's another team from Ontario and one from Alberta. Who were they?
Stony Creek Tigers are representing Ontario. They won the J. Ross Robertson Cup Championship there a couple of weeks ago. And the Innsvale Eagles out of Alberta are representing the Alberta there. And obviously we're going to be representing Newfoundland. Yeah,
when we were playing and coaching in Alberta, we used to take a few swings at Stony Plain because they were the dominant team, and BC had a bunch of good teams too that were always in the mix. So Ian, as part of bolstering the lineup to take your team up to the Allen Cup, because you're going to be playing against some pretty stout competition, how many players were you allowed to pick up and who were they?
We're allowed to pick up 6 strengthening players from within the league, Paddy, and a lot of these players are well known throughout senior hockey for the last number of years. Goaltender AJ Whippen, who won a Allen Cup with Grand Falls, is going to be in net for us. We got defenseman Liam Best out of the TV Stars, Carl Robertson from Clareville, forwards Chris Hodge from the CB Blues, Kevin Reed from Clareville Caraboos, and Ryan Dawson also from the Deception Bay CBs.
Whiffen has long been the best goalie in the province. All due respect to the Caps goaltender. What's Kyle's last name?
Downer.
Kyle Downer. Listen, Ian, when do you take off? Because I know it starts on the 24th. Or the 20th, pardon me.
Off. Yes, we're playing at 7 o'clock on the 20th at the opening ceremonies against Dundas. But we're leaving now Friday morning to head up. And everybody's very excited. A lot of butterflies in the stomach. We have Ivan Hepgood coming up, join the management team, and Ivan's well versed in the Allen Cup, so we're very excited to have Ivan coming up with us. So that's going to be a great help to our organisation. So yeah, it runs from the 20th to the 27th. The championship game is going to be broadcast live on CHCH in Ontario. I think a lot of the local cable companies there carry that station. So please, God, if we make the championship, you'll be able to get it on your TVs. But we also are streaming the games live. If anybody's interested in streaming them, they can find the details on our Southern Shore Senior Breakers Facebook page. And, this is a very costly venture, Paddy. And, hats off to our main sponsor, Puglitsevich, and all the Newfoundland Labrador business community that has helped us raise the money to bring the team up there, and to all our fans and the general public for buying tickets on our quad that we have up on tickets. And there are tickets still available on the ATV if anybody's interested in supporting and get the chance of winning themselves a quad for the summer.
Good luck, safe travels, and hopefully if people can help the support on the financial side, to be obviously most welcome. I appreciate the time, Ian. Have a blast.
All right, thanks, Eddie. Thanks for your help.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. Of course, Ivan Hapgood was the man behind the Clareville Caraboos for quite a long time when they were members of the Allen Cup fight, and of course brought home an Allen Cup, maybe even 2. Let's take a break. When we come back, Sandra was there to talk about wait times at St. Clair's and some housing issues, and then lots of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Sandra. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing grand. How about you?
Good, thank you. Patty, on Monday, first of all, I'd like to say that I have a daughter who's 37. She's physically disabled and non-verbal, and she depends on me for her life skills.
Okay.
So she has a feeding tube, and I had a requisition put in to get a new one, of course, still waiting on that. And Monday evening, supper time, I was feeding her, and her feeding tube broke. After a while, like, anything else, it just breaks down. So I called 811, and they told me within the next 4 hours that I should take her over to emergency. So being living next to the hospital, I got ready and took her over right away. We registered in and told them that I'm here for an emergency feeding tube, and she needs another feed within the next several hours. So we waited, and make a long story short, at 11:30 we finally got in to inside, and I asked the girl, how long, more is it going to be? She said, we don't know. I'm really busy. I got to do this, and I got to do that. I said, I understand that. 1:30, finally, someone come in and told me that emergency do not do the feeding tubes. So I said, here I am, 8 hours in. My daughter needs a feeding tube. Why couldn't someone tell me that at 7 hours ago?
So if they're not able to do feeding tubes at the emergency room, who is?
Well, what happened then, she told me, this was just a nurse practitioner, she told me what she's going to do is send call the radiologist in the morning at 7, and they will get back to me. So Tuesday morning, I got a call from this nurse practitioner, and she said, radiology would like for you to come over by 10:30. So we went over again yesterday morning at 10:30. They were going to put a new feeding tube in for her. And between the jigs and the reels, Patty, they couldn't even find the feeding tube. They had to go around. Took 2 hours for them to try to find a feeding tube in the hospital.
I'm not sure how this would be so confusing, because I don't imagine it's such a unique thing that people don't know where the feeding tubes would be or who's able to do it, what profession. It sounds like there's a little bit of miscommunication going on inside the ranks here, because you would think even the triage nurse would know full well whether or not they could do it on site or not.
Yes. I figured I'd go over because it's only maybe 20 minutes to get it done. Right? That's all it takes. And they could have done that in emergency. They tried last night to get her feeding tube out, yesterday afternoon, to try to get her feeding tube out. But what was happening, when they were pulling on it, she was tensing up. And, of course, the feeding tube wouldn't come out. So the guy the man or the nurse or male nurse, he just said, I can't do it. He said, I don't know why it's not coming out. So finally, when the emergency doctor came up, she tried, and the same thing. She said, I'm taking her down, putting her to sleep, and getting it done. So I couldn't feed my child yesterday morning because that tube was fed. So it was nearly 20 hours without any food, drink, or medication in her body.
It's terrible.
It is terrible.
It absolutely is. So just so I understand, when you say that the feeding tube broke, what does that actually mean? It cracked?
After a while, it's almost like a little flap on the top of the feeding tube. What I do is you have a syringe and you suck the milk up with the syringe and you put it into the feeding tube. You lift up that flap. After a while, they kind of leak around that. So what I used to do was bend the tube when she was finished and put a bit of tape around it so it wouldn't leak while I was waiting for the new tube to be put in, waiting for the requisition to come. But yesterday, supper time, when I was cutting the tape, I cut the feeding tube by accident, of course. And so anyway, I even went out to him and I said, my daughter needs to be, some type of liquid's got to be put into her. We've got to be, a line got to be put in. She got to get fluids.
I was just going to say, in the opportunity to hydrate, did they administer a line?
They administer a line, and they had all that put in, but then the doctors came in again and tried to get that feeding tube out. And by the time they got the line went in, the line was in, but what happened then, they took her down and done the tube. So 4:30, when she was done, I took her home, and that was the first time she had something to eat since the day before at 5:30.
And how was she now?
She is really, really tired today.
I would imagine she is. And is she, was there any, beyond the obvious, adverse effects with going so long without any real sustenance, without being fed properly?
No, I got to say, thank God, everything is good. But I said, even people in the waiting room were saying it's a sin. She should be taken. She should be done before anybody else.
Yeah, triage is a tricky piece of business, isn't it?
Oh, big time. Big time. She can eat through her mouth, with a spoon, take it through her mouth, because she would aspirate through it with it, right, if it went down the wrong way. So the feeding tube had to be put in. That's the only way she could, get liquids and stuff, and her special type of milk, right?
Well, I'm glad she's doing okay now. There is some confusion associated with, someone who receives the patient or their family at the triage window was unable to give you the correct information about whether or not they could actually help your daughter, because if you found out that they couldn't, you would have gone to the next option. You would have figured something else out, as opposed to sit there for just to be told hours later what was going to happen, and then have to sit for whatever amount of time you said while they actually located and found a feeding tube. It's just a confusing story, and I'm sure it was quite frustrating and maybe a bit scary for you and your daughter.
Oh, it was. I really got a bit upset yesterday, and I asked them, she's my daughter. She needs something to eat. She hasn't had water, milk, or any medication in 20 hours. You would. I even said to him, I said, you wouldn't treat a dog like that.
No, you're right, and you'd probably get yourself in trouble if you treated your animal like that. Sandra, I'm glad it got finally figured out. Would you like to say anything else before I go to the 11 o'clock news?
No, I just want to get that out there this morning. Thank you for listening.
I appreciate your time. I'm glad it worked out, even though it was a long, drawn affair.
Thank you so much, Patty.
You're welcome, Sandra. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Quick check-in on the Twitter before we get to the 11 o'clock news where VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Some interesting data coming out with the trans-mounted pipeline. Of course, the twinning of that pipeline, which is supposed to launch on the 1st of May. Overall costs, which have exploded. Then the revenue side, because the country gets $11 a barrel. Maybe we'll talk about that after, or maybe we'll save it for the preamble tomorrow. All right, our email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, Dominic's here to talk about a leaky roof. Jason wants to talk about some housing issues out in the city of Corner Brook, and Gail wants to chime in, I guess, based on the call we just had with Sandra about triage at the emergency rooms. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 5. Dominic, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Couldn't be better. How about yourself?
Well, not too good. My old heart is pounding out of my chest.
What's happening?
I was talking to you there a while ago.
I remember.
About a leaky roof. I'm the foolish fella that paid $10,000 for a leaky roof. So this morning, I got up in the attic, and to see what I see, it'll make her cry. And if there keeps on raining, what's going to happen, I'm going to get in the front room, the ceiling going to come down. So if there's someone out there, a roofer, can help me, I'll pay for his work to come out and look at it, see what I can do until the weather gets better.
Where do you live, Dominic? Carbonear. So it's just so unfortunate that so many people have been taken to the woodshed by these fly-by-nighter contractors who are not living up to the job. They're taking down payments or deposits, not completing the work or doing shoddy work, and then they're gone and you can't find them. They won't come back. They won't repair what they did in the first place. It's terrible.
Yeah, well, there's over $10,000 spent on that roof now. I had to put the top on the chimney. He said that was leaking, and it's still leaking. But is there someone out there who can give me some information what I could do? I appreciate it.
Sure, and if anyone listening in and around the Carbonear area is a roofer and can do some quality work and give Dominic an idea what he's looking at, please do contact us and we will put them on to you. Dominic, how's that?
Okay, that'll be fine. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Good luck. Let me know how it works out.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. I mean, it's terrible. Everyone has to be just so careful, right? For starters, it's hard enough to get a contractor, and if you got a small job, it becomes virtually impossible to get a contractor. But when so many of them are operating in a fly-by-night fashion, taking deposits and down payments, not coming back to complete the work and or can't be found after their shoddy work is uncovered, it's just really terrible. I suppose, like everything else, the whole buyer beware. Get some references, follow up on these people. So whether they're just simply going to apply some tar to your driveway or do the roof for you or fix your fence, ask them for some references so that you can make a few calls and see whether or not they lived up to their promises and they did quality work on time as promised, those types of things, so that you don't find yourself in the predicament that Dominic finds himself in. Let's go to line number 6. Jason, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, Jason.
How are you today, Patty?
Grand. How about you?
Oh, boy, I got a big problem out here in Corner Brook.
Which is what?
The emergency shelter line wants to move me to Gander. I'm I got post-traumatic stress disorder. I was in an altercation with a Wolverine, like I told you before, in the Canadian National Defence Base, Cold Lake, Alberta.
I remember that call. Crazy story.
And I haven't been the same since. And my parents, God love them, he does everything in the world to help me. He gives me meals. He cleans my clothes. But I had altercation, and I wakes up sometimes in the nightmares, and I gets a little violent. I could be physically violent or just yelling and screaming violent. So I couldn't live with my parents anymore, so I had to find somewhere else. Now, for the last 2 years, I've been living off and on in a tent. This winter, I had a lung infection. I had to go to my doctor and get antibiotics. The shelter line keeps putting it off. They asked me for my information from the doctor where I'm not allowed to work ever again. I'm not supposed to live with anybody because of the problems that I have coming out of the sleep. They wanted to move me to Gander. Now, I don't have any supports in Gander. My doctor's out here. I go to my parents' house every now and then to get a shower and to get a nice warm meal. If I was in Gander, how am I supposed to do that? I don't even go to the store and get groceries. And like I said, if I didn't even have an address, I wouldn't even get any money. If I'm not allowed to work, there was times for the last year that I didn't have any money because I didn't have an address. The government said, we're not going to give you any money because you don't have an address. So what kinds of things are the governments doing to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador? Like, I'm 48 years old, and I've been living in a tent. Like, last night I had to sleep in a car, my buddy's car. I got to pick him up tonight from the airport. He went down to Florida for the last 10 days, and I helped his mother go to the hospital. She had a colonoscopy she had to do, so he give me the car so I could do that. Now, the last couple of nights, like I said, I had to sleep in his car. But when he comes home tonight at 7 o'clock, he's going to take his car back, and then I'm going to have to walk around Corner Brook. Now, it's pretty cold out here. It's 2 degrees right now, and it's supposed to be snow and stuff tomorrow. What kinds of things would I do? Where do I go? I don't even know what to do anymore.
What's the rationale behind having to move you from Corner Brook to Gander? Like, why did they tell you that was happening?
Well, they're saying that there's no accommodations out there. What happened was I was up in the Corner Brook Hotel for a little while, and I had the first night I was there, it was Thursday night last week. I had someone knock on my door at 1 o'clock. I never got up and answered the door. I just turned over and went back to sleep. Friday night around 1:20, someone knocked on my door again. I didn't answer it. Then on Saturday night around 3 o'clock in the morning, the staff and some guy is outside my door yelling and screaming. So Monday morning, I decided to go in, and I said to the guy that owns the place, I said, I got an issue. And as soon as I said I got an issue, that was it. He was cursing and swearing on me, saying all kinds of stuff to me. Said, I'm not allowed to come back here no more.
And who's this person?
The guy that runs the Corner Brook Hotel.
Okay.
And, he just said he wouldn't hear me. Like, there was cops and an ambulance with their lights going Monday morning outside the hotel. Now, I understand he probably got a lot of problems, and he didn't want to hear another problem. But he didn't have to take it out on me. He didn't have to be yelling and screaming and swearing on me. Like, all I did was go up and I said, I got an issue I'd like to talk to someone about. And he just went off. And I said, okay, that's fine, But they got that's the only place that they're using beside the place up in Dunfield Park on what used to be Elm. Now it's 27. And there's like a 3-bedroom place. And that's full, so I can't go there. Now, what about all the empty places up in Dunfield Park? There's at least 10 buildings up there that no one's living in. Why can't they do some of them up with the money that they're supposed to be getting from Trudeau's government? He's there giving out all these billions of dollars for housing. How come there's nothing going on in Corner Brook?
Well, there is. There's monies that are going to be associated with, I think it's in the Crestview Avenue area. I can't remember the name of that park, where they are going to tear down some of the dilapidated buildings and replace them with new accommodations. That's ongoing at this moment, so that's happening. They're also working towards trying to reopen some of the shuttered Newfoundland Labrador Housing Corporation units that are in Corner Brook and Labrador and different parts of the province, which is long overdue. They seem to be chipping away at that, but not quick enough for many people who remain on a waiting list, which is over 2,000 people is the last count I saw.
Right. And that's horrible. Like, Newfoundland, I thought, was a beautiful, wonderful place with a bunch of wonderful people. And why is the government... I thought the government would be no different. They're people from Newfoundland and Labrador, I believe. So what did they do? Did they just lose their compassion? Is their compassion broken? Do they not have compassion for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador? My parents are 80 years old. They can't continue to do this, and when they pass on, what am I supposed to do then? Like I said, I'm 48. I'm never allowed to work again. There's days I don't sleep for 3 and 4 days at a time. I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm not allowed to operate a vehicle or nothing like that when that's going on.
Are you getting any sort of treatment? Maybe,
I can't even. I haven't even talked to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I've asked, the hospital. I've asked my doctor. One time, the psychologist called and I wasn't available for the phone. Actually, I think I might have been asleep and I didn't hear it. And I haven't had anything since. Like, I've been calling, like, the helplines and stuff, but they only, ask you if you're going to kill yourself. I'm not going to kill myself ever. I don't believe in suicide. I think that is horrible for people that would even, if they got that much problem, then they need a lot of help. But right now, I'm not, like, that's the first question that they always ask through these health lines. They're like, are you going to kill yourself? Or are you going to kill anybody else? Like, no, I'm not. But that's a hard thing to hear when you're trying to get some help. First thing, are you going to kill yourself? I'm already in a bad enough state. I don't need any more negativity. I feel that is negativity when someone would open up the conversation with, are you going to kill yourself?
Yeah, I can understand that sentiment. I suppose what they're trying to achieve is to understand the state of mind as to whether or not you find yourself in crisis or simply in need of help. And I'm not justifying it, because you're right. When you're struggling, it's probably not the first thing you need or want to hear out of someone's mouth. Jason, I wish this was not the way it is. So this is instigated. I just want to make sure I understand here. So because you had some sort of run-in with the guy managing the hotel, that person got the government officials to remove you from the city and send you to Gander? So is that what we're talking about?
No, well, see, they're saying that besides Cornerbrook Hotel, and then there's a 3-bedroom spot in Dunfield Park. That's where Crestview and all those places are.
Okay.
On the place that used to be called Elm, because now they're all numbers, on a place called Elm, there's a 3-bedroom a place there for shelter. Again, there's only 3 bedrooms. I think there's 2 people, 1 person left this morning. I know these things. Like I said, my old man's an Anglican minister. He knows people. He knows stuff. But what can we do if there's nowhere? Like, I can't even find anywhere to rent in a budget. Like, the money that the government would give me wouldn't even be enough for the rent. And then if I could find a place that with the money, then how do I eat? How do I pay my light bills? I don't understand. Like, I'm never allowed to work again. My doctor sent in these notes over and over and over, and they keep asking for them, and nothing ever gets done. But they keep asking for these documentations. Even the emergency shelter line asked for it. And I got them the documentation, and then all of a sudden now I got to go to Gander because there's nowhere in Cornerbrook.
Hopefully you can find some sort of additional support structure in Gander. I wish things were easier for you, Jason, and I appreciate your time.
I can't go to Gander. I wouldn't be able to go to Gander. My support's here in Cornerbrook.
Okay.
So again tonight now I'm going to have to walk around Cornerbrook because I won't be able to get into the woods tonight to set up a tent. I got to pick up my buddy from the airport at 7 o'clock in the night. So how would I be able to walk into the woods and be able to set up a tent in the dark?
Understood.
Like, even if, you know what I'm saying? Like, so, I don't understand where the government lacks on keeping people. Like I said, I got a post-traumatic. I got a mental illness. It's just I don't understand why they can't help at all. Like, there's no help. Housing, the actual housing itself, just won't even answer the calls for me anymore. For to get a place.
Jason, I wish it was different. I appreciate your time. Anything else quickly before I have to go?
And I also called the minister's office. I'm still waiting for them to call me back. They said that they would, but that was 2 days ago. So just so if they're listening, they could understand. Like, I would like to have a call from them, at least someone. Or if you could give me some information on where I could talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist to.
I wish I could. The only way to navigate that system is doing what you've already done in the past, is to deal with 811, because I wouldn't even know where to point you in Cornerbrook. I have a little bit more understanding about how to navigate it in my neck of the woods, but if you call 811 and have no luck trying to get on a list, trying to get some counselling or support, if you can't figure it out, if you get back to us, I will try to do something on your behalf.
Thank you, Patty. You have a wonderful day, and thank you for all the work you do with mental health.
I appreciate your time. I wish you well.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Boy, oh boy. Let's take a break. When we come back, Gail is next to talk about emergency triage. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Gail, you're on the air.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm okay this morning. Thank you.
Oh, I'm frustrated. So, the government seems to accept that we have a lack of nurses and a lack of doctors, but I don't know if they accept the fact that the hospitals are run amok. There's no organization whatsoever. And I think Sandra pointed that out really clearly. I have a story that will point it out just as clearly. But maybe there wouldn't be so many people in the waiting room if we had the least little bit of organization. Big businesses have efficiency experts. I don't know why the hospitals can't sit somebody in the waiting room so that they can see what ordinary people see so clearly.
I think they do. I actually know someone who used to be in the world of being a patient navigator, now does that type of role for NL Health Services. Can you give me an example where you think this organization causes some of the concerns or problems?
Well, big time. I mean, Sandra pointed it out with if her daughter had been told, she had been told in the first 10 minutes she was there that they don't provide that service, she could have saved herself many hours.
Absolutely.
So in my example, my adult son fell on the ice. We didn't know if his foot was sprained or strained or broken or what it was. So he went to his doctor. His doctor said, you know what, I'm not sure. I think you need to get an x-ray. He went to St. Clair's. He got his x-ray less than an hour, and the doctor came out and said, your foot is broken. However, since your doctor sent you in, now we have to put you back through Emerge. So we said, fine, not a problem. That was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He didn't see a doctor until 6:30 the next morning. I was 15 and some hours sat with a broken foot. And that's fine. I'm sure they had emergencies coming in and big things happening. But when he saw the doctor, here's what the doctor told him. Your foot is broken. Go to Lawton's and buy a boot. We don't have anybody in orthopedics, and of course this was now Thursday, and the next day was Good Friday. We probably won't have anybody in until Monday, so we'll put your name on the list, and when someone can see you, we'll call you. That information could have been given to him 3 o'clock the day before. Not only him, there was another young woman in the waiting room in the exact same situation, sat right beside me, and she had been there from 1 o'clock waiting to see the doctor. So if the radiologist was good enough to read an x-ray and say, your foot is broken, why was he not good enough to say, your foot is broken, go to Lawton's, buy a boot, I'll put your name on the list, and somebody will call you when they get around to it. That I see as total disorganization.
So you say that you could have been told the day before. So is this an issue of through the jigs and the reels or an emergency or surgeries or what have you that they thought orthopedics would be present, but then when the next day came they weren't? Or is this simply your assertion is they didn't know which end was up and consequently they made you wait an extra day to be told what they should have told you the day before? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying the radiologist told him at 3 o'clock on Wednesday.
Right.
Your foot is broken. Now you must go be seen at emergency. So that's okay. If that's their process, that's fine. So he went up to emergency and sat and waited until 6:30 the following morning, 15 hours later. When he saw a doctor, all the doctor did was say, look at the x-ray that had been taken the day before and repeat, your foot is broken. We don't have anybody in orthopedics, but we'll put you on a list. And when we get somebody, they'll call you, which they did do on Monday. Well, I'm thankful that they didn't just leave him sitting there till Monday. But They let him go home after 15 and a half hours with the instructions, go to Lawton's, buy a boot.
It's
Somebody
strange.
will see you Monday.
I suppose someone in radiology wouldn't know if there's anyone in orthopedics at ER, but if you present to the triage nurse and say, okay, we went and got our x-ray, now we need to see someone in orthopedics so that we can get a cast applied, they would know at that moment in time that they had someone or they did not have someone. So that's where I'm kind of confused here. You know, same thing with Sandra. If the triage nurse was unaware that they didn't have the healthcare professional required to replace a feeding tube, then that should be information they have at the tip of their tongue, or at least the tip of their keyboard. You should be able to know exactly who's behind the curtains back there, all of the disciplines, nurse practitioners, LPNs, doctors, registered nurses, whoever. I don't know why that information wouldn't be front and center, because triage is not simply about, you know, determining who's at the top of the list, the priority list, and doing your vitals, what have you. It should be whether or not we can help you, period.
That's exactly my point. He could have gotten out of the emergency room, would have been good for him because his foot was broken and he did require surgery. He did get surgery a week later. All this happened on Wednesday. His surgery was the following Tuesday. But once they x-rayed and knew it was broken and said it was broken and the next step is orthopedics, if there was any kind of organization at all, the slightest kind, Sandra's case is even worse. They didn't even provide her service. So don't make her sit there for all these hours. I tell you, as I sat there and fumed, I wondered, is this some sort of a way to make us believe that lack of nurses and lack of doctors is a real problem because we had to wait 15 hours and she had to wait 17, and so it's a real problem? Is it to anybody's advantage to have all these people sit in the waiting room for no reason? I mean, surely they have enough really sick people coming in that need doctors. They don't need all these people sitting in the waiting room for hours and hours for nothing, for no reason. It just, to me, I'm really beginning to question, is our problem lack of nurses and doctors, or is our problem simply a lack of organization, that the hospitals are just run amok and you can sit there for 17 hours because that's acceptable now?
It could be a bit of column A and a bit of column B, I would think.
I'm just rotted over the whole thing, and then to think that Sandra's going through the same thing, and that other lady that was sat in the waiting room beside us, and how many more people are just sitting there waiting to be sent home with pretty much what they could have been told hours and hours and hours before. So when you get the chance to talk to someone in government, that would be a really good question that I would love the answer to. Is there anybody in charge, or do people just go to work and do whatever they feel like doing that day?
You know, for those types of questions, and I get where you're coming from, those types of operational questions, it's easy enough for ministers, regardless of the portfolio, to be able to kind of tap dance around that stuff, because that's not really their role. What I need is like the David Diamonds of the world, people that are in charge of operations, folks who are on the ground that know exactly how the process works, to give us some answers and accountability. Because if it's simply as you suggest, I see my schedule, I show up, and it's, we just all go about our business as if we know what we're doing, when in fact a coordinated effort is what makes things efficient and seamless and productive at the same time. So I'm going to get some operational questions asked on your behalf. We'll see what we can find out.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And to Sandra, whoever she is, she did a great thing today, because not only did she get her story out, she made me angry enough to call in with my story. And perhaps if more people did that, the government would have to do something about it.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, it is time for the news. When we come back, the PC MHA elect for Fogo Island Cape Friels is Jim McKenna. He joins us right after this. Don't go away.
The Tim Power Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to the MHA elect for Fogo Island Cape Friels. That's the PC candidate and victor, Jim McKenna. Good morning, Jim. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
I'm well, sir. Thanks. How about you?
I'm a little bit flued up. I picked up a cold in the campaign, but other than that, I guess I'm still on the high for the standing support that I got, and I just want to pass on my thank you to all those voters who voted for me on election day.
Jim, before we go any further, if you have us on speaker or something, can you take us off? Because it sounds quite hollow.
No, I don't have you on speaker. No, I'm just talking directly into my iPhone.
Fair enough. Welcome to the show. You continue with your thank you to the voters and the workers, but right off the bat, congratulations.
Okay, thank you, Paddy. I also want to thank my campaign manager who put 100% into his work into the campaign. All the MHAs who came out and did some door knocking throughout the district, and also the former MHAs, Clayton Forsey, Harry Harding, and Sam Windsor for their wonderful support. I also want to congratulate the two other candidates on their stepping up to the platform and carrying out a clean campaign. Having said that, Paddy, I'm ready now to work with the Fogo Island Council here and all other councils, committees, boards, various boards and local groups and committees in the district.
Jim, do you have any experience in the community in the past? Like someone mentioned to me that you might have been part of the Transportation Committee or the Ferry Committee in years past. Is that accurate?
No, I wasn't on the Transportation Committee, but I was on various committees here in the community over the years. I used to be on the hospital board. I've been involved with Chamber of Commerce. I was also on different other committees years ago. And of course, I had a bit of experience with politics back in the days of Brian Pickford and Tom Rideouts. But other than that, no, most of my career was just business here on the island. I ran several successful businesses here on the island.
So, one of the concepts, now people will talk about the rationale as to how and why the PCs were successful in turning Fogo Island, Cape Friels to the Tories, whether it be about fisheries-related matters or federal carbon tax or the ongoing tone and tenor of the Liberal government. Like, who knows? It's pretty arbitrary stuff. I have no earthly idea, and I'm sure no one has a real concise idea. But one thing that you have said, and many others are saying, is that it doesn't feel like the government is listening. Now, that can mean different things to different people. So from your perspective, what does that mean?
Well, Paddy, I don't think they're in touch with the local people anymore. I mean, people are hurting. I got this from all the doors and knocked down throughout the district. People, with fixed incomes and
Jim, we'd really like to be able to hear you. So whether it means moving around the room a little bit, see if we can improve the connection, because I'd like to be able to hear you clearly.
Okay. This sound any better?
Worse.
Worse?
Yeah.
It must be something to do with the Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi calling here.
Okay, that's better. That's better.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, Paddy, like I said, it's the word out there that people are hurting, and they're just they know the government is not in touch anymore with the local people, and their tax burden is unreal, and the people are just barely getting by.
So, in addition to some of the cost of living measures that the government has brought forward, where are they missing the mark? Because, look, I hear as many stories as anybody in this province about times of trouble and strife and inability to make ends meet and some of the cost of living pressures. So what has the government not done that you would do differently that would make an appreciable difference?
Well, I mean, I think for overtax, I think there should be a different formula when it comes to the tax base of this province. I mean, we're paying, every time there's a new tax comes on, we're still paying HST on tax on tax on tax. And I mean, they have to change the formulas to take the burden off the people. I mean, and this sugar tax, I mean, that's outrageous. What does it have to cost the people of this province? I mean, they took in close on $17 million last year in sugar tax. And that's hurting at the counter when you check out your groceries.
And I suppose at some point, people can either change their behaviours based on price pressures or not. And obviously, the sugar tax, they're bringing even more than they thought they would in the first place. So that does lead to the thought that it probably isn't working. People are not changing their behaviours, whether that's good or bad or indifferent. It's just more than they actually thought they forecasted on the revenue side in the first place.
Yes. Well, Teddy, I don't want to get into too many topics here this morning. I'm not feeling the best with the soul that I have. But in closing, I want to pass my condolence to the James family of our neighbouring community of Change Islands who tragically lost their son on election day. And I'm sure I can speak on behalf of all the people at Fogo and Cape Trills and pass the condolence to that family.
I echo those sentiments. I'd like to know what happened.
I don't know the details, Paddy. I'd say it's under investigation, so I can't comment on anything like that right now.
No, me neither. I wasn't asking you to. It's just when the workplace accident stories rear their ugly head, it's always helpful to know what actually happened so that hopefully that information seeps into the minds of other workers and their supervisors and inspectors so that we hopefully don't have more of these workplace incidents and related deaths in the future. Once again, Jim, congratulations. When you're feeling up to it and you're feeling a bit better, we welcome you back on to talk about some of the other issues of the day.
Absolutely, Paddy. I appreciate your time. And thank BOC for having me on.
My pleasure, Jim. Stay in touch.
All right, thank you.
Right, bye-bye. Yeah, because, look, opposition plays a critically important role, no doubt about it. But as we steamroll towards a general election at some point, look, we don't know when it's going to be. Lots of people have thought that this year is going to be the year where it's called, but it can indeed stretch well into the next year. And we do indeed. Like, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, I don't care which party has the good idea. I just want good ideas. I want things that work. I don't want, knee-jerk reactions to issues of the day, reacting as opposed to getting out in front of things, understanding the reality that people are facing, looking down the road, some vision and planning, and try to accommodate public policy with those looks, because we really do have a very much knee-jerk reaction here. Crisis brings on policy and spend, as opposed to knowing that things are happening. The housing issue has been happening for decades. Healthcare issues have been happening for a long time, and still, here we are, trying to get ahead of it, when getting ahead of it would have been probably a good idea 5 years ago. Housing issue 10 years ago, or whatever time frame people choose. Let's keep rolling. Let's go to line number 3. Glenn, you're on the air.
How are we doing this morning, Paddy?
Top shelf. How about you?
Not so bad. You had a gentleman call in a little while ago with problems with his leaky roof, and he's afraid his ceilings are going to fall in.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
There's a product available to do it in a hurry. It's called fiber coat. It's like a foundation coating, only it got little pieces of fiberglass in it. I did my roof with it a load of years ago, and when they came in to take the roof off and replace it, they broke it off in big sheets. That's how well this stuff works. It comes in a 5-gallon can, the same as foundation tar, and you just roll it on.
And so that's a stopgap measure, not a long-term solution, right, Glenn?
Boy, I put it on my roof. I had shingles blow up just after I bought my house. I went out and I did the back roof of it. And it was about 4 years later that I got the roof changed. And when they went to take the shingles off the back of the roof, they weren't taking them off in pieces. They were breaking it off in sheets. So it actually held everything down better than what the shingles were in the first place. But if you got a leaky roof and you're worried about your ceilings coming in and everything, it is a stopgap measure. It's inexpensive and it's quick.
And so, what's the name of the product one more time?
I believe at the time was called Fiber Coat. It's the same as a foundation tar, only it got fiberglass in it. And I tell you, Patty, when I did my roof with that stuff, they broke it off in big sheets.
I appreciate the suggestion. Maybe that's something Dominic will be able to avail of. Can you roll it on a wet roof? Because that's the problem he's having today, is that the rain is now causing increased damage to his property. So does it need dry conditions, or do you happen to know?
No, according to the directions, you can, where it's tar, you can put it on in the wet or the dry.
Excellent. We will pass that along to Dominic in case he's not listening, and I appreciate your time this morning, Glenn. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you have a good day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
And, someone else sent along an email, and I think they were probably just being saucy or funny, but it's one of those products that you see, those infomercials on TV. What's that guy goes around and spraying that black stuff, some sort of sealant product on the bottom of a boat and that kind of stuff? What is that called? Anyway, I don't think that's the solution, but we have had a couple of people reach out looking for Dominic's number, so hopefully we're going to be able to get him some help. All right, final break of the morning. When we come back, Joe, you're next to talk about the health sciences complex. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Joe, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. This story actually has to do with health science. It's not about myself, but it's a friend of mine, her son. So last Tuesday. He had an injury to his hand, and he went to his family doctor. He's one of the lucky ones that has a family doctor, and she sent him right away to get an X-ray. So that's what he did. He went last Tuesday to get an X-ray done. After the X-ray was done, the radiologist told him, you go to emergency now, so that's where he went. And they told him there's no need for you to come here. They will call you with regards to the results of your X-ray. Back to his family doctor. So the next day he called his family doctor looking for results, and they hadn't received them as yet. This was Wednesday. Thursday they called again, still no results. The doctor was trying to get results from the Health Science Center. Friday, of course, the doctor's office closed at 2 o'clock, and at that time they still haven't received the report back whether his arm was broken or what was on the go with it. So at that time he decided, okay, I'm going to go to the emergency room and see if I can get seen there. So he went there Friday afternoon, and he sat in the waiting room until 3 o'clock in the morning. Finally, the doctor saw him and said, yeah, there's something on the go with your arm. We'd like to do a little more investigation into it and do a CT scan, but there's no one available to do a CT scan. So we're just going to put a temporary partial cast on your arm, and someone will call you in the next day or so for you to come back in. So this was early Saturday morning this happened, and so they waited Saturday all day, Sunday all day, waiting for a call. Monday morning, continued to call. They called the Health Science to the CT scan, and finally someone said, well, we got nothing on the file here for you, but come in at 3 o'clock, and we'll do it. So that's what they did. After the CT scan was done, they said, okay, go back to emergency now. It'll be an hour, so we'll have the results over to emergency. So they went to the emergency room right after the CT scan, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, they finally seen a doctor. Now, this was after waiting 12 hours on Friday. They sat in the emergency room again Monday until Tuesday morning, 2 o'clock. And the doctor came in and said, we can't see anything wrong with your arm. You can take that partial cast off and go home. And they never even gave him a pair of scissors as such to cut the cast off himself. And he ended up going home. So I'm not sure what the issue is with the healthcare system, and I'm not saying it's a doctor's issue or what it is. Maybe there's not enough doctors in the emergency room being staffed, but the emergency room is always full there. And I don't know if they're trying to deter people from going to emergency, because there is a lot of people out there without a doctor, and God forbid if something should happen and they got to see a doctor, they have no other alternative but to go to the emergency room and sit and wait for 12, 15, maybe even 18 hours to get seen.
Yeah, it's madness. So, I mean, a couple of things. It'd be nice to know just how many people actually do not have a family doctor, because the government uses one number, the NLMA uses another number, and they are miles apart. Last one I remember is 136,000, says the NLMA. The government says more like 50,000. Then they talk about expanding the collaborative care footprint to eventually have 35 of them, which will help, but it will only really help if we have additional staff as opposed to just shuffling people around, which is currently what we've been doing. The emergency room itself, look, I don't know exactly what's going on. How could I? Whether it be efficiencies based on management or the lack thereof, and, didn't even get a pair of scissors, those types of things. I wonder if we can also factor this in. Without a doubt, healthcare professionals are worked to the bone. The long shifts, the inability to get time off, and consequently, maybe, just maybe, for some, their bedside manner and their attention to detail has been hampered because they are just burnt to a crisp. And I'm not offering them excuses, but none of us can be at our level best when we're unable to get some time off, when we're working 18, 24-hour shifts. I bet you that factors in some form or fashion.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. The healthcare system. I have a brother of mine who's a paramedic, and he can tell you all kinds of stories about what he sees on a regular basis. And but I'm just curious, like the health science and emergency room. Is it just one doctor that's going to be on there that's going to be seeing probably about 50 people that's sitting in the waiting room, and some of them, there might be a sinus infection. You still need something to clear it up. And if you don't have a doctor, you have no other choice but to go to an emergency like that, unless the government can come up with, I know they have a triage system, but it doesn't seem to be working because people are not going in and out as quickly as they should be, and it's hurting our, you talked earlier about Sandra and with Gail there on those situations, and this is just another story, and how many stories are out there that's not being told?
It's a fair question. There's also something else that we don't see as we wait in the waiting room, exactly what's going on in the ER itself. Whether that be with staff who are occupied with the offloading of patients from paramedics, how many emergencies might float in the door, how many things happen with people who are already admitted to hospital. So we never really know, which adds to the frustration. The triage nurses completely unable to give you a timeline to as when you might be seen. So I think that just adds to the confusion, because you sit there around other people who are sick or are worried or have a need for an update for their prescription or something, but we don't even know what's going on back there. And so people ask the same questions. How many doctors are on staff? And I have no idea. I have no earthly idea how many doctors would be working at St. Clair's in the ER or at the Health Sciences in the ER, and I do know it's a specialty. Not every doctor has been trained to work in the emergency room situation. But good questions, and I don't know if we can ever get clear, concise answers to those, but we're happy to ask, because the questions just pile up. The concerns are very similar across the board, whether it be with the ambulance system and or going to the ER and or waiting to get a family doctor and or when the collaborative care clinic might be coming to your neighbourhood or when the virtual care offerings are going to be expanded. It's all just so very confusing.
It is very confusing for sure. And listen, I'm not saying anything against our healthcare workers, because there's no doubt about it. They are overworked. There's no doubt about it. I have a nephew who is a nurse himself, and those days are long days and they're hard days. There's no doubt about it. It just seems like the government needs to put more focus on how we can, deal with these issues in a much timely manner. Because it could be your grandmother, your mother, your father, and you don't want someone in there sitting in an emergency room with all the communicable diseases that's on the go with regards to COVID and stuff like that. I think it's still happening, and maybe even coming out worse than when they went in there for an issue.
100%. I appreciate the call this morning, Joe. Thanks for doing it.
All right, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Then you'll add to it, and this has been a big part of it over the years, is that, how are we interacting with the captive audience we have at nursing schools or the med school, what have you? Because people ask that one question that just comes to mind every time I think of this, is a lady was sitting at the convocation ceremonies over at the Arts and Culture Centre. They were going through the med school graduates, and she asked herself, I wonder how many of these grads have been offered a job here locally. Fair question. Then we hear the concerns coming from nursing students. Is so many of them, now not everybody can get the job of their dreams. Not everybody can work on 4 North B. There's going to be different areas and different clinics and hospitals that need to be staffed up. So that's the reality. But I've heard from registered nurses, from nursing students, that they're being told that so many of them are not getting a job offer that includes the word permanent. They're getting temporary full-time offers, which comes with a consequence regarding their benefits and their pensions. So they're saying, look, I'm in demand. People are asking me to come to this province, wherever that might be across the country, to take on a permanent full-time job. So if the government on one hand is trying to save money by not having people engaged in the public pension scheme right away, out of school, then they're creating a whip for their own tail, because that's money's down the road when the needs today are obvious. Anyway, good show today, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer David Williams, I'm your host Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.